Okay, let's get back to the prospect of new pipelines in Canada. There is a three-way dance going on among the Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, and the BC Premier, David Eby, over the issue of building new pipelines through BC. Our guest says Carney has a challenge here in placating the BC leader and his own caucus as he moves towards approving projects through the province. We're joined now by Heather Exner-Pirot, a Senior Fellow and Director of Energy, Natural Resources and the Environment at Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Yeah, delighted to be here.
So there certainly seems to be something in the wind here that the Prime Minister and Danielle Smith will reach some kind of an outline accord on building, on Carney backing pipelines, particularly tied to that Pathways carbon removal or capture project in Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, been anticipating what was, dubbed a Grey Cup summit for several months. Obviously, the Grey Cup has passed with no summit, but we understand why. Is this, the government had a confidence vote on Monday to pass the budget, and they weren't going to be, risking the Elizabeth May's votes or the NDP votes before that was passed. And the other thing so window of opportunity has opened. On the other side of the window is the UCP AGM that Premier Danielle Smith will have to be addressing her own caucus in her own base. And so hopefully she has some good news to deliver to them because she's put herself out there quite a bit as well.
And David Eby went through his own event as well, the BC Premier. His stance so far has been he's opposed to new pipelines, it appears, although he appears open to expanding capacity on the existing Trans Mountain.
Yeah, so interesting kind of evolution of Premier Eby that, last year he was kind of against most fossil fuels, certainly warmed up to the idea of LNG over the course of the last few months, which has been very welcomed. But perhaps as a quid pro quo to his base, as he's embraced gas, which BC produces in copious amounts and gets royalties from, he's had to come out pretty hard against oil and has taken in, quite a, drawing very strict lines in the sand and made this again into an Alberta-BC showdown.
And Mr. Carney, you note, has a dilemma here. He doesn't want to alienate BC. And his own caucus, you say, there is not strong support for pipelines in the Liberal caucus?
Yeah, so this is what's interesting to me is we've seen, many pipeline polls in Canada across the last 10 months since Trump was inaugurated as president down south. They're very usually, in the 70% range, what I call apple pie and motherhood kinds of numbers. And most governments don't want to be the wrong side of the 70%.
Sorry, Heather, just clarify, 70% against pipelines?
Or? In favor, yeah.
Oh, in favor of pipelines. Sorry, carry on, please.
Yeah. So usually it's not easy to be on the wrong side of that kind of a divide. But obviously for the BC NDP caucus and the Liberal caucus, the divide looks a little bit different. And so that has been the political challenge for Carney. So far, he's done what I would say are the lower hanging fruits, setting up the major projects office, sprinkling money here and there. But on the pipeline issue, this is obviously going to be one where he has to expend some political capital one way or the other.
And is that the logical place to build the pipelines rather than to Hudson's Bay or, via Manitoba or the long lamented idea of a pipeline going east to central Canada? Is that really the name of the game, getting new pipelines in BC?
Well, absolutely. The easiest thing to do is what the market is doing, as your viewers would know, is the expansion of the main line going south and the expansion, as you mentioned, to Trans Mountain, which BC is not opposed to. And that should get us pretty close to about 700,000 barrels, which is, a pretty good pipeline sized. So it's the 2030s that we're starting to worry about. Trans Mountain was wildly expensive. You went through, one of the biggest cities in Canada, one of the most environmentally friendly cities in Canada. Northern Gateway seems, or what we would call, a similar Northern Gateway, seems like a much better route. Obviously, the prize is the Pacific Basin, which is short on oil, and obviously the fastest growing energy market in the world.
Northern Gateway was the pipeline that foundered in part on lack of Aboriginal consultation.
Yes, there's a few things that, kind of stymied or helped along the demise of Northern Gateway. And so actually you would have to do something different. But the landscape for industry, Indigenous relations in Canada is vastly different than it was 10 years ago. We've already seen a number of big pipeline deals where Indigenous communities have taken equity ownership. And so I think if the price was right, and if you could mitigate the impacts on Aboriginal and treaty rights, people certainly think that there's a potential to work with nations and to do something that they would be, mutually acceptable.
Yeah, it's interesting that we were talking to Canada Nickel the other day. They would like to build a nickel mine, as I'm sure you know, near Timmins or a bit north of Timmins. And there's actual Aboriginal or Indigenous equity ownership there. And that's, as you say, there seems to be a lot of progress made on that.
Yes, and the government has put up some pretty big numbers, $10 billion that they have in the federal Indigenous loan guarantee. Alberta has $3 billion in theirs, and there's some other, financing means available to that. So if that was something the First Nations along the route and along the coast in and around Prince Rupert were interested in, I think they'd find that there was, financing to line up behind them.
So what do you think? Will we get a photo op for both premiers and Mr. Carney announcing a friendly deal, a pact here?
So I think we'll certainly see an MOU. As I understand, it'll probably still be pretty high level. I think what we're looking for is that it's something that investors, can take solace in and start making some investment decisions in. A pipeline, and Premier Smith has already said she'll be not submitting the pipeline proposal until the spring. And so it'll be still a deal to make a deal on the pipeline side. There's a lot of other regulations that could be cleared away with this MOU that I think the sector is going to be looking at first, like, finally getting rid of the emissions cap, addressing the carbon market, industrial carbon tax, and those kinds of things.
Because the emissions cap is gone, so that was a real sore point for the oil and gas industry and Alberta. So Carney has made a few concessions, I suppose, at his end. One sticking point seems to be, though, will governments put up money, the billions of dollars or some of the billions of dollars needed for pipelines?
Yes, and I did hear, I was at the Canadian Heavy Oil Association conference yesterday. The numbers batting around is $20 billion for that carbon capture pipeline, $30 billion for that, quid pro quo pipeline to the Northwest Coast, and then $80 billion that you would need in production to fill it. So we're looking at some pretty big numbers, and investors are going to need quite a lot of certainty. But certainly the Canadian oil and gas sector has been, much more favored in the recent past months than the last 5 years, I would say.
Heather, thank you very much indeed. Heather Exner-Pirot, Senior Fellow and Director of Energy, Natural Resources and Environment at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.